I always remember when Rodin had the commission to do the commemoration of Balzac, the figure of Balzac. The people asked him to say, "Master, do you need any information to do that project?" And he said, "Well, I don't know, but ask whatever you need to do that project." And he said, "I would love to meet the tailor of Balzac." Okay, I think it's beautiful because probably the tailor was the person who knew the body of Balzac much better than nobody else. I mean, we are always thinking about the soul. I love to think about body and soul. I guess is the right balance. But the soul without the body, and then how to express something impossible to touch with physical elements. I think that is one of the beautiful challenges of a sculpture. Many times people feel that the sculpture is a problem of materials. It's always heavy, it's always complicated, it's always boring. Galleries hate the sculptures. Museums are always against. Because I remember when I did my show at Jeu de Paume in Paris, the director of the museum was complaining every day, "Jaume, with your show I could do 10 painters." Okay. But when the piece is there, people start to think something magnetic, something which is, I don't know, difficult to describe. Because it's a relationship, a direct relationship between you, but your body, and something else that is always asking and make you feel completely different, probably more archaic, more primitive than normally we are. Well, this guy jumped to that image. You can see it's one of my more iconic images of the human body done by letters. The piece that is right here in the university is similar but with different alphabets. Why I did that? I remember one day in Tel Aviv talking with my friends. I remember that, as you know, if you change a comma in one text, the world changes, the universe is different, one comma. And that means that our memories are permanently tattooed on our skin, but with invisible ink. And suddenly you can find somebody that could read this invisible ink in your skin, and you become friends or lovers or something. And I'm upset completely that our life is permanently tattooing and tattooing and tattooing on our body this kind of memories, letters, that makes, as the tailor of Balzac, a new dress on our body. I've been developing, because I love also light. I've been working much before of this family of pieces, a lot with light, but in this kind of pieces, I wanted to work also with the light or the light in the night, in the darkness, to try that the piece never blinds the things that are in the other side. And in Yorkshire, we explore very much this way, or for example, in Miami, with a similar piece but in white. How much it could change in function of the position of a piece or let's say the geographical situation, so much with the palm trees here or with the beautiful British landscape in Yorkshire, how much it changed. That was the show in Nashville. That piece is actually now in Washington in a collection. And it was always this idea of the conversation. You probably remember my piece in Chicago, the Crown Fountain, which is a similar idea. Our image and the mirror, or our image in front of others, to try to create a conversation that extracts incredible, amazing energy. And when people are in between, I think the piece is complete. It seems that the dialogue is complete. That was a piece in Ohio, in Toledo. And many times, people are invited to walk inside, and like this girl in the Rice University, and for some reasons, I don't know why, the pieces seems like a big mom embracing the kids or ourselves, and people has the incredible experience today to feel alone with themselves, which I guess is incredibly important. And I love that picture because that girl is completely in a different world, just working on this little ship. That is one of the fans I got in UK during my exhibition. Okay, that was at Place Vendôme in Paris. We did that installation with this beautiful sculpture in the center that was done with music notes and straps, because it's another kind of alphabet, let's say. We can communicate with words, we can communicate with music. I will talk later about the sounds and the vibration of the materials. We can communicate with mathematical formulas, as the piece that I have at the MIT in Boston. Or the piece that I installed more recently in Tokyo, in where the letters are elongated and becomes like roots coming out from the earth. And I think it's paying homage to something that I believe completely, that we are part of earth. We change completely like wine. If the wine grows here or there, the wine is completely different. And I guess people as well, even if we are traveling a lot or we can live in the different countries, we have a certain something inside that makes us different. And that, I think, is something so important. It's the interior message in our bottle that we can communicate with others. I guess more diverse we are, more communication we can make with the others. I hate uniformation, obviously. And those letters making like roots going inside the earth. I think it was a fantastic piece in Tokyo. And I did a similar piece in Montreal that was opening last year. And the piece is facing the new entrance of the city, because they changed completely the way that cars were coming in, demolishing this big highway, and now it's a beautiful street with a park. And they asked me a piece that would install it in the entrance, but more to welcome people, because the entrance is back to the people arriving to the city. It's just saying goodbye to the people leaving. And I guess because when you say goodbye, people are always back. I prefer. And that is the piece in the entrance of the MIT in Boston, which it was also a fantastic experience when the university did the 150th anniversary. They asked me a piece, and I've been working with the mathematical formulas. Okay, that piece that is right in front of the main building now become the place in when a student or the parents, when visiting kids, are taking the photos, because the piece becomes in some ways, let's say, the soul of the place, and they took the memories inside. The kids are in and the parents take pictures. You see it right across the street. Okay, other fans that I have in Antibes, in the south of France. I did that piece which was beautiful, facing the ocean, well, the sea, the Mediterranean Sea. I will talk later a little bit more about water and my fascination about water, because it's something that is never in the same place. You cannot see water twice, because it's always moving. And for me, it's probably the most important public space, because it don't belongs to no one. It's there, today is here, tomorrow there, it's always moving. And I guess it's a beautiful metaphor about democracy and movement of ideas, and this incredible string that is moving and give us energy. I love water, but probably I love water because I don't swim, and I don't float. It's terribly heavy. And the only place where I'm swimming as a fish is at the Dead Sea. But maybe that fascination for the water did that I did a lot of projects around water and the idea of fluidity. And that it's near of my home, it's in Antibes in the south of France. And I did that piece facing the water. I think it's a beautiful spot as well. And another project around water was in this little island in the south of Japan, which is Okajima. It's a beautiful island. Look at the beautiful village. This little island, it was for fishers, but now everybody's almost retired. But during several months, the island gets completely covered with flowers, very beautiful. And it's a lot of visitors arriving, and they asked me a place in where to welcoming people arriving to the island. And I did something that I was always dreaming to do, which is this little pavilion to create an island in the island, because I did also water all around, and this strange pavilion made out with letters from different alphabets, and this just very simple box in where people could have a cup of soup or to buy a t-shirt or the tickets for the ferry. You see how beautiful is this strange oval shape in the middle of the water, in the middle of the island, and the island in the middle of the water again. And it was very beautiful because I also had the possibility to express what is for me the ideal of a home. And the ideal of a home is like the shellfish with the two sides. And here you can understand one side is physically existing and the other is the reflection on the water. Here is perfect. You see the two sides of the shellfish, and this silhouette is myself walking inside the building. And I've been working a lot with this idea of duality, real and reflection, or real or the shadow. And in that piece, I guess, it was pretty successful for me because when the water is completely quiet, the piece is reflecting on the other side, and it makes the ideal home for me, which is the shellfish. The shadows, again, and thanks to the shadows, I've been developing this family of words which I call curtains of poetry. I select the poets that has been more influential in my life. I grew up with poetry. My father was a passionate reading books and books and books. And I grew up with text more than with images. And that it's a little bit an homage about the incredible impact that the text could have in ourselves. Even if you are not reading the text, the shape of the letters. And also the beauty as a metaphor about society, because it seems that one letter is nothing, it's just nothing. But together with others, they could do wars, and wars with wars, text with text, culture with culture, a concept, a tradition, history, etc. And I guess it's a beautiful metaphor about community, about individuals. A single person seems nothing, but together with another is a couple, kids, neighborhood, city, country, continent, universe. You know, from the smaller to the greatest. And I always found in the text a beautiful metaphor about ourselves. And those curtains are fantastic because I'm doing like clouds of text or along walls of text. And sometimes people take the decision, look at like this woman which is passing through. That reminds me in my childhood when I was a kid with my mother. In my Mediterranean tradition, the stores had a curtain with metal pieces to avoid mosquitoes and flies, etc. And I remember when she was buying, I was playing with the curtain, and it was a beautiful sound. It was cling, 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 cling. And if one day you have the possibility to experience one of my curtains, it's the same when you pass through. Cling, 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 cling. The letters are sound, have a beautiful sound in between them. Okay. That is a piece that I love and has been shown in New York first time at Le Long Gallery and then in Augsburg in Germany and recently has been shown at the Madison Museum in Wisconsin. And it's a piece I was talking with Lynn this for lunch, that it's a fantastic piece, very similar like the one in Okajima, which is one physical part, real, and another complete with a reflection, but in that case with shadows. I told her that the day of the opening in New York, it was a beautiful experience for me because it was a guy walking between the pieces and comes to me and said, Jaume, I love your piece. I said, well, thank you. And he said, if tomorrow you are back in the gallery and you miss one of the shadows, it was me who stole it. And I felt it was so beautiful because finally the shadows that we cannot touch is the soul of the piece, it's a projection. It's you probably remember in Peter Pan, his obsession was to seal the shadow because he lost the shadow. I guess in a sculpture, light and darkness are key. Light, of course, but the shadow. But in our lives, I think it's pretty similar. If you lose your shadow, okay? And look at how beautiful. It was the idea, can you imagine, of if one day we can fly around the planets and the continents. My obsession is one day all continents could return to one original position as one. No more borders, no more frontiers, no more walls, no more flags, only people, no more passports. But it takes a little while, but we will get it. Okay, that was another family in my work, which is the idea of the vibration of materials. When you beat something, it has a sound, because the materials are vibrating. Our body is vibrating always. My words are the vibration of something that expands sound and fill up the space. William Blake had a beautiful poem, well, who said, "One thought fills immensity." I think that idea expressed pretty well my intentions in this kind of works, because when you are talking or when you are thinking, you are filling up the space with energy. You are filling up the space not with objects or with something physically visual, but with energy. It was the tradition when you are talking, where the words are going, where they disappear or they remain here, just floating, and it's a beautiful history about the frozen words. You know, when in a very cold day the words that you are talking gets frozen, and one day that it's warmer, the words starts to fail like drops in unconnected sounds. That history coming from the 16th century, it was always very important for my work, and vibration is part of that. When you beat the gongs, the vibration of the material expands to your body, and it feels that the wall is only one. And every time I did this kind of big installations, people are allowed to take the mallet and to beat the gongs. And it's incredible, they start to smile. It seems that they spend years waiting, all their life, waiting that moment. Like in the big orchestras that you see the guy with the drums waiting 1 hour, then say, boom, and sit again. Okay, our life sometimes is not to do, it's to have the energy to do it. And that is a little bit the opposite. That kind of work was like the metronome, with some droplets of water was falling down every 8-10 seconds, beating the cymbals and making ding, ding, regularly. It's not our decision, it's the nature. And it was beautiful because I've been working with the poetry of Blake, and when you are engraving the text on the symbols, you are eating metal. That means that the words, the specific words of every poem are changing the sound of every symbol in a very subtle way. And it was a terrific experience. The biggest installation in that case was in the Burj Khalifa in Dubai with 196 symbols. It's a permanent piece. And 196 symbols because it's the number of countries in the world. And I love it, the problem that for these cultures in the Middle East, they could not, they don't accept the representation. And they said, but Jaume, no figures, no representation of anyone. And I decided to represent all the countries, but with the sound of the symbols, because every country has a different way to vibrate in that way. And it was fantastic. From the ceiling, droplets of water are falling. You probably see the water below. You see it's two pools with the 196 symbols. You probably remember Mission Impossible 4, and Tom Cruise just passed in between. It's the best part of the movie. Only two seconds, but fantastic. And look at how beautiful when the droplet beat the cymbal, it's making a sound. The cymbals has been done in Italy for me by a beautiful technician. It is a little bit going up in the edge. That means that some water remains on the edge, and because the weight, the symbol just move a little bit, and then it's more quantity of water falling down, and it's ping, 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 and suddenly drop, ping, ping, drop, and it's fantastic. Okay. Okay, the circle is also, as you know, or the sphere, is one of the most perfect geometrical shapes. I guess it's probably the most near of our soul, because it's always in expansion, and our memories, our recalls, our incredible connection with the nature, I guess, is always in circles. And that's the reason that I'm working a lot with circles. That was a project with Norman Foster in the snow. We did the collaboration to do a piece in the snow. And I wanted to do probably the most precise landscape portrait, which is using the GPS numbers of the Norman's studio in London, my studio in Barcelona, and the site in Sestierre, that was in the Italian Alps, when they did the Olympic Games over there, the Winter Olympic Games. And it was a beautiful piece, even if Norman as architect was a little bit concerned because the snow melts, and for him was a tragedy that the piece is melting in 1 week. It's melting, okay. But that was beautiful because we did the piece, and the piece 1 week after just melted. It was a fantastic experience. I think it's one of my preferred pieces, actually. Okay, that is another family of works. I love to talk about them like fat angels that could not fly, in the way that there are plenty of imperfection, as probably all of us. But even with our default, we have the capacity to illuminate life. I love that concept because I love a writer called Elias Canetti. And he was also upset about this idea that perfection don't let go in nobody, in the way that everything that is a little bit incorrect is the best way to communicate and to expand our energy to others. And I love those guys that are not so nice in terms of shape, but they are, for them, so difficult to fly that get the stick on the wall and they keep in a very stupid position. Or those guys that decided to keep on top of poles, you see, just renouncing to participate in the normal life, like probably the Estilids in the old Constantinople did. And I'm installing around the world this kind of sitting figures, changing lights inside, which seems is the soul. It's a kinetic kind of light that is moving in a very gentle way, changing colors. And it's fantastic because they are creating a kind of conversations. That is at the National Sculpture Center. They kept both pieces, like angels on top of the spoils. Or in Nice, this kind of big conversation with colors. Okay, another family, that it's my self-portrait embracing a tree. I'm covered with the names of composers 7 times. It's me 7 times with the names of music composers, which I love. You probably remember when in the Middle Age that when alchemists were working, dreaming about this possibility to transform life, we said, no, to change lead into gold. No, but that is just a metaphor. The idea was what's happened with the materials when they die. And I guess the theory was beautiful because when the body died, just returned to the mineral, to the earth. But from this dead body, a new life is coming up with the shape of a tree. And this tree, the roots are in the earth, the trunk is like a bridge, and the branches is embracing the cosmos. And they call the philosophical tree the tree of wisdom. Many religions was using that, but the alchemists had this fantastic idea that a new life is coming out from the dead body. Well, for me it was a very interesting idea to try to work with death and alive. That means I cast my body in bronze. That means it's fixed in one size. They could not move anymore, bronze. But planting a real tree inside, which continues to grow. And I think it's, because for me it was a problem always to think, my body has a size, but my soul, because I continue to live, I continue to collect experiences and experiences, where my soul is now, because I have not more room for my soul. And I have that experiences. I have installed pieces all around the world. And I'm checking what's happened with the trunk, because the trunk continues to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And I suppose one day my face will disappear inside, that the trunk will lead completely with the piece. Well, I have to wait a little bit more, I presume. But I think it's an interesting experience to see what's happened with something alive inside something dead. Well, that is the crown fountain everybody knows. And that was also a dream that, thanks God, I had the capacity to transform into reality, which was the idea of conversation using the concept of words, but with water. This idea, I'll give you life, I think is beautiful in a conversation. Installing this reflecting pool in the center, which is 1/8 of an inch thick, that people could walk really on top. And probably it was something that I did for myself, because I don't swim, I could walk on the water at least. And it was a terrific experience, because the water is not anymore something to be seen, but an experience in itself. And for Chicago was fantastic, because that piece also just split the time in two, when the crown fountain is working and when it's not working. And it's fantastic because the newspaper said, the crown fountain is working, the spring is here, which I think is beautiful in the way that the piece is creating a rhythm also for a city. And because, as you know, in winter the water is not working, the video images, yes. It's a different clip, because for the water, I did a clip that the guy is cleaning eyes, and suddenly it takes that position. I remember we bought a barber chair with a little engine to put everybody in the same position, the lights, and we ran the biggest camera that Sony had at that time, that they did Star Wars at that time. And I remember we spent months and months filming 1,000 people living in town with the same frame, with the same position. But for many people, the most difficult part was to put the leaf. I remember with my team, we said, the same position is when you blow a candle. And so it was very difficult, this position. We enjoyed very much. It was a fantastic experience, that project. And my intention was to return to the public space, something that I guess we get lost, which was the gargoyle. In my tradition, in the Central Europe or in the Mediterranean area, we have a lot of fountains with grotesque faces spouting water, or in the cathedrals, this kind of strange animals or strange faces as gargoyles. And I guess it was something that we lost with the new architecture. And it was important to return, but not with the idea of divinities, or I don't know, with real people, the real anonymous people that really are making a city. Because when we talk about a city, it's always about buildings, 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 architecture, but people. And we filmed 1,000 inhabitants of the city. That I guess it was a fantastic experience for us, as well for me especially. We spent almost 4 years working on that project. And that is a very nice pictures, because you see all the kids always waiting the right moment. Kids were the main supporters of my project. When I decided to remove the fence the night before the opening, we don't know from where, wow, it was a pack of kids immediately there that night. And the parents were complaining because they returned home completely wet. But they understood but it was a way to play, really to enjoy the humidity, the water, this idea. I don't know why when you are walking on water you feel free. Everything seems possible. And those kids, suddenly you see it's an explosion of beauty. It just, nothing else than this moment. I think it was a terrific experience. You see, it's a place of freedom, and I think it's like on a stage. I've been working a lot also in a stage design for operas. I love opera. But that is really, I don't know, on a stage without any intention. Everyone, it's free to do whatever they like. And it's plenty of people just enjoying the water. Okay, that is the project that Lynn was mentioning, also surrounded by water, the little island right in front of San Marco Square in Venice, in where San Giorgio Maggiore, which is this beautiful basilica, they invite me to do an installation for the Venice Biennial, not the last one, the one before. And I've been working with the idea of light, and this idea that human beings has this tremendous capacity to collect light and to pass this light to others. And I installed this very big head with mesh right in front of the entrance of the piece, and you can see that the head never was blinding whatever was in the other side. It was other visitors around. If you are here through the head, you see the other guys looking to you. That means that the piece was an amazing excuse to see the others, to create a conversation with the other visitors. And right below the cupola, I installed this blessing hand, the hand in the blessing position. It was my hand elongated as my head. And as you probably know from the Russian icons or the Christian tradition, this idea of, also in the Eastern cultures, the Buddhas or the Indian, etc., the position of the hands has also certain language. You can talk, I don't know how people that could not speak talks with the hands, but it's a language. And the blessing hand, because that was done in a basilica which has the Mass every Sunday. I thought it was nice to work a site-specific project for them. And that was the piece for them. And it's beautiful because trying to get information about, I realized that it was the G of Jesus Christ, you see. I had not any idea, but it was, and also they was talking, no, it's not the hand of a general, it's the hand of a professor. We are in one university, you probably knows better than I. Okay, in any case, the hand was done with a mix of alphabets. Look at it, was surrounded by beautiful paintings of Tintoretto. It was a privilege to be surrounded by the other friends. And the hand was giving the title of the show Together, because it was done with many different alphabets. And because the most important part was not who are you or where are you come from or what is your religion. Doesn't matter. What we have in common, what we can share in terms of spirituality. And it was a fantastic experience also with the community living in. It's a monk community living in that place. In the back side of the church, they have a very long room that they call the manica lunga, the long arm. And but when they invited me the first time, I thought it was a punishment more than a celebration, because it's just narrow like that and long. And finally, I thought it was great to try to make this kind of line of portraits in alabaster. As you know, alabaster is a very translucent kind of a stone. You love stones, you told me, no? And very soft stone, and the light passed through. And it was in the main basilica, it was the main head with the mesh head that the light passed through. But here, in a stone, we got something similar. It was really beautiful. It's very nice because look at the transparency of the ears. And it was, the light passed through the stone. and made this strange aura around the heads. Okay, and it was really a beautiful installation. Okay, my works with text has, after the Crown Fountain project, I continues on the idea of portraits. In San Giorgio, you saw this line of portraits, but I did many different ways of portraits. In that case was a project that I did in Rio de Janeiro. Another of my dreams was to install a piece really in the water, and that was the Botafogo Bay, right in front of the Sugar Loaf, and it was in front of the Corcovado. It was a fantastic installation, and as always, those portraits has the eyes closed in a kind of dream state position. I remember people there, you see the Corcovado over there, and they said, but Jaume, how is possible that this girl has the eyes closed in a so amazing area like this? I said, well, I guess, I mean, it's beautiful when they have the eyes closed because they are looking inside. We have a beautiful landscape that we never communicate to the others. And that it's something beautiful because my head becomes a kind of mirroring where the visitor could say, wow, if she has the eyes closed, maybe she's seeing something incredibly important inside. And it was a very beautiful project that finally was over. It was a temporary installation for 6 months, and then the piece moved to Chicago, in where it was installed for 2 years. And I installed the piece right in this street, which splits Chicago in two, north and south. That for me was a certain dream about the equator of the city, north and south. And then it was Mr. Perez arriving one day in Chicago, said, wow, I love that piece. And he bought the piece, and we installed the piece in Miami, right in front of the museum. And I guess it was beautiful because probably closed the circle, because the piece returned to be right in front of the water again, which I guess it was the right place. And now the piece is facing the entrance of the Miami Harbor with the museum in the back. And I think it's a beautiful place. It's a portrait of a Dominican Republic girl, call it a Wilda. And now she's there, look at, from the bridge, I think it's beautiful. Okay, that is another family again, which does kind of conversations with two mesh heads. In that case was in Nashville, installed on top of this pond, which has this fantastic reflection, look at in the night. It was incredibly beautiful. And that in Chicago, in Dallas, and here in Yorkshire. Look at how beautiful, because with those pieces we really verify that everything behind, it's part of the head. And those heads were embracing the British landscape in an incredible way. And I think it was a very interesting experience, because the head is mainly made by air. I don't know how many cubic meters could contain, but it's what is made of that head. And in that case, it's done by the landscape. I mean, look at the beautiful trees that you can have inside the heads. Or for example, in Calgary, that I did a huge head, much bigger than ever. I opened 2 entrances in the knee, in the neck, over here. And people finally could walk inside the head of somebody else, which is one of the dreams. Oh God, if we had the possibility to go inside the head of somebody else, or our head, why not? But in that case, we can really see when you are walking. Look at, well, that was the opening of the piece. But look at when you are inside the head, you can see the skyline of the city through the face. It's a little bit, well, I didn't thought about it, but I noticed that it could be a certain homage to Magritte, which I love, because this face on the sky, okay, I think it's a fantastic piece. It's in Calgary. If one day you are there, you must go. Okay, and that is in Bordeaux. That it's one of the pieces that remain after my large exhibition in the city. And it's one of the cast iron heads that I'm working, compressing the volume. Okay, I've been always fascinated in front of a coin that is the portrait of somebody, and you look at in the other side and it's nothing. I said, but where is the other side of that guy? And I've been trying and trying to compressing the volume of one head until the moment that it has this amazing illusion that when you are walking around, the head seems to disappear. From one side, it seems complete, it seems with the natural volume, but when you are walking, it seems that the piece is disappearing. That was in Chatsworth, in UK as well, or in Venice, in the President Biennial. And it was fantastic because people was passing by the canal, and the piece seems disappearing with the movement of the evaporator. And that piece has been installed in Harvard permanently now. It's also in the campus of Harvard. But it seems natural, but if you see the piece from that way, it's completely flat like this. It's fantastic, like that one in Toledo. Okay, that is my work in marble. That is a huge marble piece. It was a piece for the Albrecht Knox in Buffalo. And I thought it was working very well in dialogue with those columns. Okay, and that is a project that I love, especially that we did last year in Tokyo. It's this fantastic architect, Kuma, who did a private home, and they wanted absolutely one of my pieces, and we developed together that beautiful head, which is about 2.5 meters tall. But in this beautiful entrance, you see that it seems that it's in and out. I don't know. I think it's. I love that poet. That architect, the project, because it's not so big. Everything seems very tiny and intimate, but I think it's exquisite. You see. Okay, and that is the opposite, the big things. Okay, that was a project that I love especially because it was in the north of England. It was at Sutton Manor, which was one of the most important mines in the north of England. And when Margaret Thatcher canceled all the carbon system in that country, many of these little villages becomes completely without work, well, it was a disaster. Okay, that people, in any case, in St. Helens, they had the incredible idea to transform the old place in where the mine was into a public park. After 20 years recovering from that disaster, they have a different economy, etc. And they were looking for somebody, and they asked me with the Biennial of Liverpool to do a project. And I decided to do this head really in the top of this hill. You know, a mine working has a lot of waste material, and during years and years and years, they did a hill 86 meters height, and that is the hill that the mine was producing during those years. And my head is on the top, okay? And could be visible from the M62, which is connecting Liverpool and Manchester, but also in a very close. This is me, okay, and it was also a very strange response or reaction of the people of St. Helens, because it was, well, unfortunately, we unveiled the piece in really in this moment of a very big crisis. It was 2008, 2009, you probably remember, all of you. And everybody, normally when you do a piece in the public fields, everybody in the beginning is complaining about how much we spend to do a piece. We need other things before, we have not this and that, why to do art, okay. And I remember that Channel 4 in England did a documentary about that project. And in the end of the documentary, they interview one of the ex-miners, a very thick guy with a nose like this, well, very tough guy. And he said, but don't talk about money. The crisis is temporary, art is forever, he said. And we start to cry, all the team, because you see this man so rude, talking in a so poetical way. We really was moved by it. And that piece becomes for them like a Madonna in an Italian village. I don't know, when a girl from that area becomes Miss England, she went there to offer the crown to. Or when the rugby team won the league, the captain and some players went with the cup to the head. Okay, I mean, but that is out of our control, you know. And okay, and that is a similar project, but in New York City, in the Madison Square Park. They invite me to do an installation, and I was thinking about Echo. You probably remember Echo was a nymph that fell in love with Narcissus, but Zeus, that was always trying to get new girls, was angry because, okay. And finally, Zeus condemned Echo to live in a cave and to repeat always the last words that she was listening. Okay, and I'm almost convinced that today we have a similar problem like Echo with Zeus, that we don't know anymore if the words that we are saying are from us or just the echo of something, messages that are arriving to our heads. And we don't know what is our ideas or ideas just arriving and we are repeating. Okay, and I did that piece, which was fantastic because it was pure white, completely white. You know, in a city you have nothing white, completely white. It's always a little bit gray. And that was so white that people was a little bit astonished, like an alien arriving from somewhere else. And with the eyes closed as always, it was a beautiful piece, paying a certain homage to Brancusi and the idea of verticality. You see in the back is clear with the flat iron. And in the night was beautiful and very poetical because we illuminate from below, which is not the normal way to do it, but increase this idea of something coming from another planet. Okay, somebody just took the piece and offered the piece to the museum in Seattle. And now the piece is in Seattle, boom, in front of the water, which for me it was a present. And it's in the edge, you see, of the Olympic Park with some good friends, Calder, Mark Zucchero, etc. And the head is facing, it's funny, because with calling Echo, that piece, is facing the Mount Olympus, which is in the other side of the bay in Seattle. It is some fantastic destiny, no? Okay. And that is one of the last heads that I did is in Sweden. It's in a very remote place. I did the piece for nobody, for nature. It's in the middle of the most wildest area I've ever seen in my life, in a little island in the 2 hours north of Gothenburg. And it's there, and I think it's fantastic. And we were in the opening with, I don't know, maybe 10 people, 15 people. And it's there since 3 years, and I think it's fantastic. It's an homage to the nature. It's 14 meters tall. It's a very big piece, and it's there. Okay, that is other parts of my work, which that is installations that I did in Paris. Also making the drawings directly on the walls, and it's cast bronze pieces coming from carved wood. And we lose the sense of material because you feel it's wood, but it's bronze, but it's painted on white, and you don't recognize anymore the bronze. And that is another installation that I did at the Max Herz Museum last year, which was also very beautiful with my drawings and all the burned heads coming from demolished factories, you know. I'm using the beams to carve the heads and making this kind of pieces. And that is also this idea of transparency, but you probably feel that the species seems that they are not finished, that it's still some wires holding there, and it's probably, well, the way to think about ourselves, that we are never complete. This idea that we are under production, okay? and they are wonderful pieces. That was the show last year in New York, also with the beams and the wooden heads. Very beautiful, also with the drawings on the wall, you see. I think it was a terrific show. I guess this kind of wood is coming from this country. I guess you call yellow pine, something like that, which is a very strong and wood with a lot of resin. And for me, it's a pleasure when I'm burning the heads because the smell is delicious. It's beautiful. Okay, that's me making a drawing. Okay, and that is a show last year in France. And a museum in the center of the country, Saint-Étienne, and I've been working with the idea of opaque and transparent. In that case, it was the cast iron heads, you see, the group, but with two mesh heads that now are in San Francisco. Look at the size of the person walking. Everything seems big, but the opposite is because you could not see behind, and the other you can see through. And I think it was a fantastic experience to put all those pieces together, because it seems there's a kind of contradiction in the way to read the faces. Look at how beautiful it's that picture. That is my studio with some of the pieces that I've been doing for my show in Chicago last year. That was the show with cast stainless steel pieces with this amazing hanging piece in wood, making the sign of silence. I'm really trying to produce or fabricate, I don't know how to say, silence in this wall. It's too noisy for me. And this was a beautiful piece in the entrance of the gallery. And that is a piece that I have right now in Yorkshire again, in Yorkshire Sculptor Park. It's a portrait of a Dominican Republic girl again, call it Wilsey's. And how beautiful it looks. A person from Dominican Republic emigrate to Spain and now installed in England. You see? Look at this girl, this tourist taking a picture. Maybe she has not any idea that that girl was doing so long trip, you know, to become like an icon in the middle of the British woods. I mean, I love that, this idea of hybrid. We have to mix each other. And I think it's in this fantastic landscape to have that portrait of a girl called Wilsey coming from so far away. I think it's an homage to humanity. Okay, I'm finished. Thank you. I finished. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Does anyone have a question?
The significance of the seated in one position and then many of your sculptures, what is that?
I'm a little bit.
The significance of the seated in one position in many of your sculptures, could you talk a little bit more about that? And the second question is, how do you find models for these sculptures in relationship with them?
Well, you probably noticed that mostly part of my figures has a posture of crouching like this or kneeling. Well, because I guess it's positions in where you are the most concentrate on yourself. When you are inside your mother, you are in this kind of reply on yourself. But when you are out, when you are like this or like this, I think you are really concentrate on yourself. Sitting is a different way. But standing up is uncomfortable. And normally in my work I'm trying to explore the most interior part of ourselves. I mean, the body is like a container. Inside is a lot of liquids and things and bones and muscles and things, but I hope a soul as well. And these kind of positions create a certain tension, and also you are not producing any kind of noise. talking about the portraits, well, since I did the project in Chicago, the Crown Fountain, I decided to keep on the same line, but only taking portraits of young women. Because I always thought the future is female, but the memory as well. We guys, we are a beautiful accident, but an accident. Well, when I'm finding somebody, I ask the parents if they could come to the studio, I take images of her, and then we develop, I don't know, when I start in 2004, 5, and in those last 13 years, maybe I did around 40 portraits of different people.
You mentioned a couple of sculptors at your museum. What you seem to be appealing to you is the monumental. Why did you go for the monumental, so many pieces?
No, you know, every time I have to select images for a lecture is a tragedy, because I have to select just a few parts of me. It's just a fragment of my life. And it's a tragedy. I spend days and days because I resist, no, because everything for me has been really important. Okay, you mentioned other pieces more intimate. I'm working pieces like that. I do a lot of drawings. I do etchings. I love prints. But I could not show everything. We can spend 24 hours and talk and talk. Look at. No. The size is in proportion of the site. I'm not, I remember it's a beautiful history with the Crown Fountain, for example. I remember when they invited me to do the project, okay, they were not so confident about my capacity about technology. And then they asked me to work with several advisors there. And we spent almost 2 years preparing all the techniques around the piece. I was convinced that it was possible, but they said, but Jaume, you are always dreaming. Okay. In the end of that process, it was the moment in the big table of the person who sponsored the piece, Lester Crown. It was all the advisors and Mr. Crown and I here, and it was said, okay, the fabrication cost $17 million. Okay. And Mr. Crown, I remember, told me, Lester told me, Jaume, we were expecting 5, maybe 10, but 17. It is possible to reduce the size of the piece. And I told him, if you could reduce the size of Chicago, you could reduce the size of the piece. Because it's in exactly scale. I mean, I don't love especially monumentality, but if you should work in that corner, Michigan Avenue, Monroe, you could not do something like that. You understand me? I don't know, you should work in the right scale. You are in dialogue with the buildings and the city, and you understand me, no? And I guess monumental, it's a way that we are normally using to talk about something big. But honestly, monumental for me could be also small in the way that it's not about size, but it's about content. For example, you probably know Washington. Okay, when you walk in the streets of Washington, the mostly part of elements there are monumental because they are monuments. They are not sculptures. And that is where I'm a little bit, even the most beautiful, I don't know, the Lincoln Monument, the obelisk, it's monumental because they are commemorating something. My only interest is to commemorate life, but not death. I mean, I love life, and I want to celebrate life. But with the sculpture, I love to try to add art in the public space, but not as a commemoration, not as a monument, celebrating, I don't know, something that politicians love, I know. but I'm a little bit scared about that.
Well, that sculpture draws people to this park that never existed before.
Well, I guess the park is beautiful. You probably
Transformed Grant Park.
absolutely, absolutely. But every single element in the park has been done in a very fantastic way. I mean, but today that we are living in a, I guess, an explosion of architecture again, because many times the architect is doing the commemoration. The architect is monumental. I guess artists are needed again a lot in the public space to breathe the soul in this amazing and beautiful body. Architects do beautiful bodies, but not brain. And I guess an artist has the capacity to blow life in. But, and that is another conversation.
One half of my brain is overwhelmed by the avalanche of beauty that comes every slide is a surprise. But the other half of my brain is, I'm an engineer, is impressed with the technology that must have gone into each of these things. And you show that piece in calculated, that is like a gauge, and I wonder if you would say something about how much attention you have to, how much you have to be concerned with the structure, the engineering.
I have a lot of intuition, I could say, and I know it's possible, but nobody trusts me. Then is when an engineer is arriving, okay? And wherever I am, I have to collaborate with them. And I found an amazing kind of people, so creative and extraordinary. You mentioned the piece in Calgary, and as far as is a place that could be very cold, they don't allow me to do the piece with a stainless steel, but with carbon steel, because the tension of ice could cover the piece. Okay. And I said, but the steel could rust with humidity. And this guy asked me to install in the end of the piece something that he was calling the piece of sacrifice, that I thought it was just beautiful because it makes me dream about life, and which is a mass of steel, a mass of iron underneath with some electricity. And that piece is absorbing all the rust of the complete piece. Apparently the big ships has that, and several, I don't know, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, I don't know, they check the piece is completely destroyed, and they change for a new one. And that piece is making the sacrifice for the totality, okay? I thought, wow, that is coming from an structural engineer. And for me it was so poetical. Okay. Well, for me the way to read technology is in that way. I could be very moved by something, but I don't understand about nothing. I'm honestly, all the calculations I have, one great assistant, which is architect, and he's great for that because I hate this kind of calculations. But intuitively, I could make a piece always very safe. But that is an intuition. I could not explain why, but I know it's right. The Crown Fountain, for example, I remember when I did the proposal, and it has been accepted, the municipality was really scary to pass water through electricity in the public space, because the LED screens the water passed through the screens. And they said, Mamma mia, you know, many times in the public space you could have this kind of concerns about security, etc. I never had an accident or a problem. And honestly, I discovered this group of people, call it the structural engineers, that are amazing people.
Jaume, what about the piece in Rio, in the water?
Well, that was we call miracle. It's not engineering, that is something different. It was a miracle, that piece, because...
6 months in there.
No, I fabricated the piece in Rio, and then We spent almost 1 year or more to get the permissions to install the piece in the beach, because obviously it's protected. I mean, obviously. And everything was possible, but not to dig in the sand. And then we invent a kind of a Star of David with something to make the balance. Okay. But the problem was that the organization in Rio was not so precise. And we were in the beach with Mary Sabatino from New York and I, 1 week, waiting the moment to put the piece. Because it was the tie every 6 hours. It was more than 1 meter, almost 2 meters tie. And the crucial night, it was the big crane with the long arm with the piece taken like this to put it in the right place. And I was with the guy in the crane to really make the piece center, and with ropes, a group of people in both sides was just controlling that the head was not changing direction, because should be watching the Corcovado. Everybody just pulling the ropes, and the guy in the crane, but Jaume, because the tie is coming, and the crane was, because the wheels were the more and more in the water. And the guy said, look at Jaume, I could not continue. And he, I don't know what he touched, that the piece just fell down, boom. It was boom, boom. And the piece remains perfectly watching and completely vertical, because the beach has a slope. We calculate the slope, but I mean, it could be like this, like the Pisa Tower, you know? Perfect. And I'm always calling it the Brazilian miracle. I'm not religious, but almost, absolutely. Oh, sorry.
The title of your talk is Whispering. So I'm going to ask you, who is whispering? Why are they whispering? And what are we supposed to whisper about?
Well, I was waiting that question. I didn't talk about the title. Well, I've been using whispering many times in my work. Well, you probably noticed that in the installation with symbols, it was whispering. Because I remember when I decided to create that piece, the guy which was fabricating for me those symbols in Italy told me, Jaume, that's ridiculous. You never will hear the sound of a droplet on the symbol. It's impossible. I said, let's try. We fabricate the symbol. It's probably more thinner. And we try in Pistoia, in Tuscany, trying ping, ping, ping. And he was completely surprised. And this guy is a professional of that. And I told him, but look at, you had to adapt your body to listen that sound. Because we are very noisy. We are really very noisy. And many times when I'm installing those pieces in the entrance of the show. The first thing is that piece. And nobody listens to the sound. But this is ridiculous. And then starts to pay more attention. They adapt their body to that. And when you listen the droplet first time, wherever you are in the space, you always listen the sound. Well, I like it to say that the title Whispering, because I guess that it's something that we do normally when we are walking in the streets or in the general life. We don't pay too much attention. We are too noisy, not with our body, but also with our ideas. We have so much that we don't see nothing, okay? And I guess art has the capacity to whispering in your ear, like that. Be careful. Look at this, look at that. You know, not screaming, but this. And that is the reason to give that title, because I trust much more in this kind of art or this kind of way to communicate than to make a shock in the society. I guess art should be a little bit like rain, which is penetrating slowly and slowly and slowly and slowly. And that was the reason of my title. So well, this guy has a mic. I could not use it.
I'm really interested in the use of language and the pieces that particularly use characters and alphabet and different syntactical symbols. I look a lot of, I read a lot of language poetry, visual poetry, and so I particularly am interested in a lot of those pieces that you have. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about, your inspiration from poetry that you reference and you read. Maybe like I'm interested in how you select the characters that you're using, the arrangement of them, and the methodology to that.
I remember the first piece that I did with text was one fragment of Macbeth from Shakespeare that I always thought it was the best definition of a sculpture. When it's the moment that Macbeth is talking with Lady Macbeth and he realized that he didn't kill a man, that he killed the possibility to sleep. And he says, sleep no more. I guess that moment, it's incredible. I told you during my talk that a sculptor is trying to talk about something invisible, the abstraction, with physical elements, things that you can touch. Okay? And that contradiction is all Macbeth. It's amazing. But after several years using text in that way, like in my curtains that you can read poetry from different poets, I decided to use the text as more in the more biological way. That means the leather, the cell, the simple cell which is composing the word, A, B, C, because even if it don't seem something important, every letter has a memory, and the size of a word or the size of a letter is the size of what it contains, in my opinion, like a sculpture. I told you before that for me was a beautiful metaphor about communities, about humanity. This idea that a single individual seems nothing, but together with others could do a family, a neighborhood, a city, etc. Okay, that is all my methodology. I mean, I'm not a person learning more about that. I love poetry, and a short is a poem normally more intense. I have the same opinion about the sculpture, when more simplicity, more powerful in the message. And with the text, it's always random. I'm not trying to say nothing. And many times I'm dreaming that maybe because the sun is in one special position, the shadows are composing one word without my control. That sometimes could happen.